I'm just
So you're going to jump in?
It's got to get
Probably not. No.
I heard a sign.
No, just for
Declare the meeting open. Welcome those present. Good to see we've got a few here tonight. Advise the meeting will be recorded in accordance with the council policy entitled Electronic Recording of Council Meeting Policy. Meetings of council to assist in the preparation of minutes and ensure a true and accurate account of the debate and discussion is available. Would have you up standing for prayers tonight, and we do our first
Mr. Mayor, I'll just quickly pray that we can just have the Lord's Prayer together. So, Lord, I just thank you for this community, God. I just thank you for what a blessing it is, and I thank you for the freedom that we have here, Lord, and just the protection that we have, not facing some of the things that other states are facing, Lord. And I just pray for tonight, God, that you'll just bless each and every councillor, Lord, and that Lord, that wisdom would come, and that they'll use that wisdom just to discuss any issues that come up. So we just pray in Jesus' name, amen. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
recording of attendance. We're all here tonight, and I want to welcome you back again tonight, Betty. I know things have been difficult for you for the last little while, and so it's nice to be able to have you back again, even if it was only for a short time. We now go on to the minutes of the last meeting. Is somebody prepared to move those?
Yes, please.
Councillor Woodward, second. Councillor Woodward, any queries on the minutes? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now go on to 3, which is issues raised by councillors. There's a response from Councillor Edlund. Is there any questions without notice?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have one. We've had a ratepayer give me a call, and I would like to see if council could investigate the lighting situation on Sampson's Avenue near Peter Chanel School. If we could write to somebody or investigate this further, please. Thank you.
We can just ask it for a little bit.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I've got 2 questions. The first one is just in regard to the Bass Highway outside Greenhams. There's one really large hole there that needs to be fixed. I know it's been mentioned before, but it's getting worse, and I just wonder where it was at with it, or as far as mistakes in regard to it.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in terms of the circumstances, you'll notice in the correspondence of tonight's meeting that we've had a reply from Grounds, but in terms of action, they've indicated that they will be attending to it, but I'm certainly happy to follow it up, given the circumstances shared around communities, that it's not in a real good condition at this point in time.
Really, if you do that, thank you. I know anyone else will call the drive down in there, so I don't know how the cars are going.
Everybody else will do all right, I'm sure.
That's it. The other one, I know I brought up a year or 2 ago in regard to the Balfour Township as far as getting it listed. I don't know how we go about it. I know we've discussed it a couple of times. I just wonder whether we can have a bit more of a look at that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, more than happy to do that.
Probably something that should go to the workshop, we'll have a discussion about what options there are. What it cost council would probably be a budget discussion as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes,
Councillor Edwards.
Mr. Mayor. My question is, what are the rules for heavy vehicles coming through town from Montague Road? Was the Miller Road designed for carrying such heavy vehicles? The use of the road carrying heavy log trucks, cattle trucks and milk tankers has increased dramatically in recent months. I've had numerous complaints and concerns from residents on Montague Road within the town boundary. The noise of exhaust brakes, weight on the bridge, the safety of school students, frequently footpaths from the high school. Along the school bus traffic, the wear and tear on Montague Road and the effluent is a real concern. Effluent spillage as the trucks round the tight corner near intersections at the lights, as the trucks turn onto Nelson Street, has been an absolute concern of businesses for months. Signage directing all heavy vehicles to travel through Miller roadway from pedestrians and heavily populated areas need to be erected as soon as possible. Thank you. Can I pass that on, please?
You will make any statements on that?
Through Mr. Mayor, I've taken one on notice and certainly get back to Councillor Woodville and Council
Yeah.
what we can do.
This is back to council because it's true. The road was built for that purpose and I know that there were a number of cars coming through.
Just another question on that, Mr. Mayor. If the sign has to go up there, does that have to be done by State Road?
Have to be okayed from state roads, as I understand.
State Road, sorry.
That's correct.
So I won't be waiting 4 years if we get the okay to put the sign up.
Through Mr. Mayor, the conversation around where the signage would be erected, essentially it would be on the Bass Highway, so there will be a conversation on State Road around where that is.
You'd want one there and one on Montague Road.
Yes.
Yep.
I hold my breath.
No, you're getting home. No.
It has been raised before, councillor.
Well, you'll get action.
Any further questions? If not, we'll move right along to item 3, item 4. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 10.3.
10.3, thank you.
It's a conflict, not a pecuniary.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, non-pecuniary, my uncle's mixed up with the mention, so 11-1.
Okay, thank you. That'd be non-pecuniary again,
Non-pecuniary, yeah.
unless you're gonna
No,
go down
right.
there and do some work.
I'm right.
Okay, we'll move to item 5 to 7, and we do this in a block. Is somebody prepared to move those?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sears, seconded Deputy Mayor. Put the motion, all those in favour? Against carried. The workshops, is there any questions on those? If not, the Mayor's appointments, are there any questions on those?
Mr. Mayor, what was the meeting with, what time of the meeting with Senator Wilker?
Senator Urquhart come down because she wanted to get a list of the priorities for our for the next election, and so we gave her the same list as we gave to Mr. Pearce, and so put them back, plus a just a general catch up. So that was the main issue that she had. Any further questions? If not, we'll move to item 7, which is nil. Item 8 is the public question time. The council encourages community participation by providing opportunity for public questions on activities of council. Councillors and staff strive to ensure all people are treated with courtesy, fairness, dignity and respect, and we ask the members of the public to apply similar standards in dealing with council. As the chairperson of the meeting, it is my responsibility to judge if a question or statement is out of order due to use of offensive, objectionable or defamatory expressions. I intend to provide people the opportunity to ask 2 questions each, and if time permits, may allow more. Please provide your name and contact details and a summary of your question on the forms provided so that if needed, we can contact you. If you have any questions, please come to the microphone and state your name and ask your question. Are there any questions from the public?
Yeah.
I'm pleased I didn't read all that tonight.
My name is Isaac Posky. You made mention a minute ago of an election priority list you gave Senator Urquhart. Is that publicly accessible at all?
Yes, most definitely.
Most definitely.
The more public it is, the better.
Where can I find it?
Our general manager would love to pass copy on to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, we'll move to notices of motion. And Councillor Plosky has one notice of motion.
Responses there.
Oh, sorry, yes, I need to. Yeah, and don't know if there's any comments that we can have on those, but they are questions that came into council and council has responded with the answers, response. Thanks, sorry. Thanks, Councillor Plosky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've raised this motion, which is important to the community. There's a lot of chatter out there in the community and a lot of disbelief in the way that the track south of our Sandy Cape were handled. So the motion is that council register a vote of no confidence in the state government for its decision to close tracks 501, 503 and 601 within the Arthur Pond Conservation Area south of Sandy Cape.
Oh, do you have a second for that?
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ryan Service.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I may read the rationale.
Yeah, you can read the rationale and then Councillor Blizzard.
I'll be patient. I can see you standing up to support me already. We'll see when that comes around, Councillor Blossom. Well, my rationale is, as I said in the opening statement, there's a lot of angst out there in the community and a lot of upset people. And why are they upset? Well, no consultation before any final decision with the local community to mediate a solution. Displayed no confidence in their minister-appointed advisory and management committee of the conservation area in not taking their advice. Historical facts included are inaccurate and irrelevant to the assessment. No consideration to the social and economic values of the area to find a solution to the issue. And a perceived conflict of interest with the report's author. There are important steps there, and that's why the motion's been raised.
Councillor Blizzard.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move a procedural motion here on the basis of, I don't think any of us are happy with exactly the way things are going about, but the wording of Councillor Poposky's motion is such that it's, to my way of thinking, is too aggressive for what we're trying to do here. I think I'd like to see this go to a workshop to be, at the earliest opportunity, to be discussed fully, frankly, openly and honestly, before we proceed to a vote on the motion.
So your procedural motion will read.
To leave it sitting on the motion, Councillor Poposky's motion on the table till the next meeting, and asking the general manager to place it on the agenda at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you. Somebody prepared to second it? Thank you. Don't have any discussion on that. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Against? Carried. You want your vote recorded against that?
For the procedural motion?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving right along, we're going to now go to planning authority, and we are going to meet as a planning authority tonight, so they just ask that the council pause, respect that, and Go from there. So first off is 10.1, which is Fairman's Terrace at Arthur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We might set up camp here for the night if you don't mind. This first one, Ferryman Terrace, Arthur River, an application for a shed in the rear corner of the property. The property does gain access from the rear via a right of way, therefore the location of the shed is taking into consideration that access and I guess also the topography of the site, which does slope from rear to forward. There is a discretion sought with regards to setback relaxation. It is fairly consistent along many of the properties along that section of Ferryman Terrace that they typically have a shed in the rear corner, whether it be the northeast or the northwest, so it's a fairly standard development style for that area. So for that reason, it should be recommended for approval.
Thank you. Somebody prepared to move that?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Rollo, second. Councillor Woodward. Is any discussion required? It all seemed pretty straightforward to me. If that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We'll now move on to 10.2, 1 Rupert Lane, Smithton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for a change of use to a transport depot and distribution. This application came about due to an inquiry through to Council's Town Planner. Through that process, it was identified that the site may have been operating without the necessary permits for what they were actually doing on site for quite some time. So this application has been submitted in order to rectify that. It is in a commercial zone. There are a number of similar operations within the close vicinity of that. It is within proximity to residential zoning, but it does have businesses either side of the property in question to provide a buffer to those residential areas. And it's also, as I said before, it's in a commercial zone which is about 1 kilometre long within that area, so it's probably not, sorry, I'll put it the opposite way. It is in keeping with how that area has developed. There was one representation particularly concerned with heavy vehicle use along Rupert Lane, and that has been addressed in the notes, giving guidance about how heavy vehicles can operate in that area, and further approvals required through engineering sections of council, which is outside the development application process. So for that reason, that's also recommended for approval.
Thank you. Somebody prepared to move this one?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Any discussion on this one? Or like the last one, thank you. None, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now go on to 10.3. 19 Hill Street, Smithton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another application for a shed at the rear of a property. This one being 19 Hill Street. It has limited setback to the southern rear boundary, but actually fits within the building envelope to that boundary. It's actually seeking a setback relaxation to the western side boundary. The property slopes in that direction, and therefore the apparent height of the shed is going to be higher percent on the western side, and therefore does not fit within the building envelope. However, any impact upon the neighbouring property to the west would be very limited, given its proximity, be very minimal overshadowing of any area of the adjoining property. We did receive 2 representations, one from the property to the south and one from the property to the east, citing concerns about, I guess, lack of setback, overshadowing, and also blocking of views, but no setback relaxations have been requested or are required to those boundaries. Therefore, those representations aren't in keeping with the discretion sought under the planning scheme. Therefore, again, recommended for approval.
Thank you. Somebody prepared to move this one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Blizzard, Councillor Kay. Any discussion at all on this one? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks,
Don't
Councillor.
worry, Joe. Didn't think you was coming back, I was a bit worried.
Thanks.
Okay, 10.4, mixed development type application for this one. So we've got visitor and function centre, cafe, providor, cheese making facility, dwelling, and manager's dwelling, attached visitor accommodation, and also a subdivision involved with the proposal at 265 Rocky Cape Road. Essentially, for a better term, cheese and wine development. This one did have quite a few discretions, but has addressed those sufficiently. We also had 3 representations centred around, I guess, the concern of overdevelopment from the Rocky Cape area. They own land and live in Rocky Cape and didn't want to see the area changing too much, and were concerned about increases in traffic due to the proposal, and then also concerns with regards to what if there was a fire in the national park. Also concerns with its potential impact upon the national park. Most of those considerations aren't considerations under the planning scheme, but were unable to be considered in making the determination. As I said, the application does address everything that was required of it under the scheme, and for that reason, again, it is recommended for approval. Probably should also add, sorry, with regards to the bushfire one, there was a bushfire report submitted with the application demonstrating that it meets all the requirements for the state legislation and the planning scheme to address the requirements there. So, yeah, recommended for approval.
Thank you. Prepared to move?
Yes, I will, Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hogan. I just want to say it's great to see faith in Circular Head and this development, also for extra tourists and bring to our area. So I'm fully supportive of it.
Thank you. So you'll move it and Councillor Arlo can move and Councillor Arlo second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to comment on the visitor and function centre, cafe, providor, artisan cheese making facility. That's been happening away, I think, for 4 or 5 years, and it's just great to see the owners assist with it and get a great outcome and result for it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? There's not. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 10.5.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm still just scrolling through, but I can probably do this one with memory. This one was to go before council at the last council meeting, but there was a legislative change made to the Land Use Planning Approvals Act, which meant we had to assess it against a different previous planning scheme rather than the new planning scheme. So that has been done and it's resubmitted for council's consideration tonight. We have an application for 34 lot subdivision, which is a residential subdivision in a general residential zone. There are 2 discretions sought as part of the application. Both of those are due to the design of the lots in the subdivision, orientation of the lots with regards to north-south rather than east-west, but that has been addressed in that most of the lots are fairly ample in size and would allow a dwelling to be constructed on each of the sites to obtain the best out of the solar alignment. The second one was with regards to internal lots. So internal lots aren't necessarily encouraged, but to get the best yield in subdivisions, they are necessary in some occasions. This one proposes 6 of the 34 lots be internal lots. and that ratio is considered to be fair. We did receive 6 representations with regards to subdivision. Most of the concern raised with regards to 2 matters. One, there is, I'll say, the potential for a burial site on the property. There is a plaque suggesting that is the case, but there's probably no confirmation of that at this point in time. Not a planning scheme matter, but I am aware that the applicant or developer has met with the representatives that are concerned about that issue and is willing to work with them on that and be very, I was going to say particular, that's not quite the word, but careful around that area during the early stages of development to ensure that nothing is disturbed. The second major issue for the representatives that was submitted was issues with regards to traffic, additional traffic in the area. It is a residential use in a residential zone, so it's residential traffic that's generated, so there should be some expectation of increased traffic. Council did have a traffic impact assessment undertaken, and it did recommend some upgrade with regards to the John Street and Britton's Road intersection, and that has been conditioned for the developer to address as part of the subdivision. Therefore, yeah, all the matters have been considered, and again recommended for council's approval.
Thank you. So we prepared to move this one?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Harris, seconded.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Councillor Wood. Want to speak to it?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I commend the planning staff for the DABC here. I said the 34 lot subdivision, something that's essential for this growing population we're requiring as not only as a council organisation but as a community. Ashley referred to the traffic flow, and there's a condition upon that with this development application. I think potentially that there may be something going in the short-term future, but we will assess that as we see this progress.
Thank you. Councillor Olway.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the subdivision. I think it's the right thing. But what really has me concerned is the transport comments that we went through and we didn't get, it was given to us about that transport study. If you recall at the last meeting when this was laid over till this meeting, I did say we need to be able to sit down and have a fair discussion about that transport thing, because I don't think there's enough work gone into where you come down on the Britton's Road and John Street, and also Carnac Court and where they're coming out of that subdivision don't line up. And the consideration of being able to go out Rockland Road ought to have been given some consideration, but we should have had that discussion around this table from last meeting to now. And that hasn't happened. It's disappointing. But I support the subdivision. I think it's got to go ahead, but that is still a great concern.
Okay, any further?
Yes, Mr Mayor. I too am worried about the transport impact statement. Firstly, I think it's, as I looked in Debenham, and I'll start with Carnac Court. What are we going to do with Carnac Court? Is there going to be a major stop sign there? Because as you come out of the subdivision area, it's close to Carnac Court, and if there's any speed there, is there any consideration to have a major stop sign?
I don't believe it's part of the application or recommendation from the TIA, so no, it was deemed to be a low-speed residential environment, so that was not required.
Was they asked to do a traffic assessment of Carnac Court?
They're asked to do a traffic assessment of the whole proposal and its local environment, so they considered Carnac Court and Britton's Road, and as per the recommendation, some improvement is required at the Britton's Road intersection.
I believe you ought to do some more work on Carnac Court, and because it's too close to the output of the road in and out of the new subdivision, and there's concern with people exiting their property. There's been some close calls with it. So I'll leave that with you to work way forward about Carney Court and have a look at that. John Street, exactly what Councillor Elder said. What discussions have they had with the residents on the
Just
eastern
to
side?
address the meeting, not.
Oh, yeah, certainly look at you, sir.
It's not that I'm not particularly looking you to do that.
Yeah, well, I went for the
That is a
young
protocol. Yes, sorry.
My next question is what correspondence or what, correspondence have you had with the people that live on the eastern side of John Street exit? I see a yellow line there, it goes for about 4 houses. I don't think I'd like a no parking area put in front of my house after a long time, and you used to if you get visitors. So what's the outcome with putting the yellow line on there?
I think Darren could probably talk to that, probably maybe anyway.
Yeah, I guess outside of this process with the traffic impact study, we'd have to take that on notice and come back with a response to investigate the whole area with the yellow line and why it was put there and what the purpose it serves. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it needs consideration. I'm not saying it isn't not, but I think we should talk to the residents there, because you're going to limit their parking of their visitors. The third thing about the traffic impact statement, and I know, obviously I've got to look at you. Why in the traffic impact statement that we wouldn't move the 50 speed zone on the other side of John Street? A matter of 50 metres. At least it slows the traffic from 60 miles. In fact, if the traffic impact statement was done properly, it would have been taken out to Armour Hardware where the 60 is. That is a standard speed in urban areas. Why do I say that? There are 10 businesses there between that sign and where the sign sits now. Plus we've got the increased traffic. So it should have been recommended in the traffic impact statement that 50 be moved out to there, plus the residents. So they were concerned to me about the traffic impact statement. I don't think they done it thorough enough.
That's something we can still do.
Yeah, and I recommend that we do follow up on. I'll take that out there.
We could probably talk about that at a workshop shortly, because
We've got a lot of workshop.
oh, yeah, well, it's not going to take us very long to discuss that.
Right, well, shouldn't have given traffic attention. By the time I finished reading this 900-page agenda, the candle was getting a bit thin. And can you explain to me what public space has been made available within the subdivision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. There's a strip down the western side to be dedicated for a footpath network.
A strip?
And on top of that, if that doesn't equate to a 5% of this site area or value, then we can ask for a further contribution above that, but that's yet to be determined.
So there's no public space for the kids to go out or the old men to go and sit under a tree or something like that?
You
There's
wouldn't
only a
get
strip
much.
for a footpath?
You wouldn't get much parkland out of the site. We can only ask for a maximum of 5%. Small.
Disappointed in the assessment. There should have been a public space made available in that area. Set an example. We've got some new subdivisions coming on board, and therefore we want to set an example. This could be the way that we have these subdivisions developed. The other part of what's the enforcement of streetscape within the subdivision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There is no requirement to landscape under any council policy that's current. But if they wish to put in streetscaping, then there are rules in which that they, species and things like that, but there's no council policy that says that they have to put in.
Here we are, Mr. Mayor. Here we are trying to beautify the area, the urban area. We're trying to become carbon neutral by planting trees. We've got a new subdivision without any requirement to have a minimum standard. Surely we need, as a council, we need to look at this. We've got 3 or 4 different subdivisions coming on, but we've got no standard. I'll rest my case.
Well, Councillor Lebowski, that's something that any councillor can talk about and bring up from time to time, but that's not our officer's fault, that's the fault of council, because we haven't got anything in place for that to happen. So if you want to change some of these rules, we need to do that at another time. And as far as the public space, the fact that there is going to be a walkway right around this, which is going to allow, we've been talking about a walkway right along past the side cuts. At least we're going to have this walkway that we can connect from Emmett Street down to up to Britain's Road. So I thought you'd be pretty happy with that.
Mr. Mayor, there's walkways and walkways. Walkways with, if you've got driveways backing onto it, are not a safe walkway.
Fair enough. Yeah, anyway,
Mr. Mayor, it's brilliant. I'd like to thank our officers for what they present, but I have to agree with Councillor Poposky and Aldater as well, that I think had the proponents looked at having a one-way into off John Street and coming out, because the old railway line joins the proponent's property on down below and on out onto Right Plum Road, which was the old railway line, which would have a perfect base for a road. That would be a solution.
Talk to your staff about that, apparently that's not true.
Yes, that is true. I've checked it. I know who owns it. I've Googled, yeah. But has anyone thought of approaching, or the proponent? It's up to them to do that, but that would be a solution for traffic, having a one-way in and coming out onto Rockland Road, and you're not going to have two lots of traffic the same coming from Rockland Road up into that block. It is possible. I've Googled it, I've satellited it. So, anyway, that's just something to put
Well,
forward.
we're dealing with this tonight.
Yeah,
so
okay. And as far as the landscaping, on Cheer Hill, when those, the development up there was the council responsible for planting their trees, or did that proponent up there, because they've had trees planted up there?
Mr. Mayor, just in relation to the concerns around the table in relation to streets, condition 37 covers that off in terms of the proponent, as part of the recommendation, is to be responsible for street tree planting to be maintained with reasonable requirements of the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services. So there is a condition in there that a street tree plan be presented and planted out as part of that proposal.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can we make sure that that is enforced then, please, Mr. Jan, with it, to make sure it's stressed that they, and somebody to check that those things are done.
Any further speakers?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that I am, what's the word, stoked that we've got a new area where there'll be new homes built, and I am sure with the traffic side of it, which we've covered quite a bit tonight, it's smarter people than us that will work that out.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? If there's nothing further, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We now move on to 11.1. Yeah. Thanks, Ashley.
That's okay.
You leave it, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Report for consideration of council is in consideration of creating a new site lease on the Nelson Street property that the council owns to facilitate the establishment of a men's shed within the Smithton community. There's a number of recommendations there in relation to tenure and arrangements in terms of sharing the site. But if I can draw your attention to the site plan, which is on page 511, the particular components of the site that would principally be subject to this agreement, if council is to support it, is the 6 metre by 12 metre colour-bond shed built to the boundary on the southern side. Let me get the orientation right. Plan's not sitting north in the document. Adjacent to the right of way, and there will be sharing of ablution and kitchen facilities in the main part of the building, which council will be familiar with. It's been used for the Charts Festival in recent years. Also an undercover area adjacent to the 12 by 6 shed. The background established in the report clearly indicates that that facility can be established under the planning scheme within the area. There are some minor works to be potentially done in relation to meeting disability access requirements and the like, but the suggestion is that they will be dependent and developed as part of the process, dare I say, using some of the able-bodied resources of the men's shed to complete those works. So I present the report for council's consideration.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any speakers? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an opportune time for to be able to do something for these people, because it's it has been a need, and you know, we let them target a block with the idea that they were going to go and do, but because of COVID, some of those things haven't worked out, and people are trying to mention, I know that they'll be very pleased about having a facility that they can use, and who knows, we might get something built for work class or on the council.
Yeah, I want to echo those words of Councillor Oldacre. I think it's an ideal location for now, and we'll get them up and going and get them happening, and we're not using it, it needs to be used, so I think that's a fantastic outcome, and everyone supports it.
Any further speakers? Obviously, I totally support it. I know that they've been battling for 3 or 4 years trying to get a home that they can call their own, and finally that looks like happening, so totally support it. No further speakers? I'll put the motion to all those in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you.
Better go and get Brisbane, yeah. Woody?
Oh, yeah, really home. Yeah, just about, yes. Boys are gonna have the toys.
Who knows, we might get 2 groups in
You never know. Financial reports, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the July 2021 financial reports in their interim format. We're still completing the 30th of June 21 financial statements to be audited, and we present the July report in their interim format. One thing to note though is that in the month of July we've had 7 applications for first homeowners grants. So people are still utilising that particular first homeowners grant as their rates come due.
Thank you. Somebody prepared to move the report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kay and Councillor Poski. Any questions or discussions? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 12.3, senior management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll note there for council's consideration, highly successful the GAP annual conference with 10 resolutions being supported. The dynamics of that is that a number of the larger organisations in the state actually seconded our motions, which was fabulous to see. Community small grants, round 1, still out. Dare I say, a few days left to go. Closing on the 31st of August. The one item that I would like to truly highlight for everybody's benefit is the 2021 Circular Head Science Gig, which is actually still Science Week this week. It's probably been one of our biggest community events organised under COVID type arrangements. Tremendous community support for that, and some very well earned congratulations should go to the communities team, particularly in relation to one staff member, Amber, who's pulled that together and, dare I say, given a tremendous experience and made that available for anybody who's into science. The Charts Festival is well and truly underway at this point in time. I trust everybody is working on their chartable entry for the program.
Finish one today.
In terms of the youth activities, there's been a number of activities there around general youth, but also one thing I would highlight is that Jody has commenced discussions with sick young people in that older, slightly older age bracket in a focus group, which is great. 7UP's back up and running. 9 sessions were held during July with a considerable number of people participating. In terms of Swirl, Stephen Stone has tendered his resignation and will be moving on to another role in the state. And the current program there is that recruitment is underway with government to manage that. In terms of tourism, Tassie's top tourist towns, Stanley. Essentially, the report there identifies that there's been a significant curtailing of tourism activity through the visitor centre, simply because of lockdowns in other states. One thing was to note is that the project Far Northwest, West by Northwest, has secured funding of $275,000 to do an engagement strategy and to look at a gap analysis in relation to new enterprises that could be triggered within the Northwest more broadly, probably specifically focused probably more around our area, given that the need for attractions and, dare I say, there'll be some pent-up demand once restrictions come off. People will be seeking to go for holiday, looking to capture those opportunities where we can. Information bulletin, there's a number of items of correspondence noted there. One of the things that I would highlight out of that is that Stanley Town Hall is probably one issue that council will need to consider and have some conversations about in relation to reinvigorating the committee there. So I present the report for council's consideration.
Councillor Oldham.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, in the correspondence that's laid on the table, point 5 of that talks about the raising of the age limit for criminal offences. If we sit here and just let that go past, it flies in the face of a motion that was put up at the LGAP. In fact, it ought to be reduced, because as soon as you raise that, then all they're doing is getting a slap on the hands when they're doing some of this vandalism, and nothing happens. I find it just annoys me to see that somebody would want to try and put that up. But, you know, we all learned how to behave ourselves when we was kids. We all go through, and they all do silly things. There's not one person here that wouldn't have done something silly. But we all have to suffer the consequences that came. And you can laugh, sir, because it would have happened to you. We came up in an era. We came up in an era where if your mother and father found out you'd done it, you got to hide them too.
Mr Mayor, I'm not sure if this is the place, but I'd like to respectfully, I'm not going to debate it here because I disagree that it challenges the Legat motion. And there's no mention of the age in the Legat motion. And I think they're completely separate issues. So I'll put that on the table. It's not the place for that debate. I think that's a workshop at some other time.
Yeah, I think if we want to progress that further, it's fine, that's fine. We would need to do it at a workshop. We're obviously not doing it tonight because there's no motions to do that. But, the reason the correspondence is here so that we can actually discuss what we need to, and we need to do that in part of our role. Anything further? Any questions? If not, is somebody prepared to move that the chairman's report be received?
So moved.
Thank you. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Anything further? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against, carried. Now come down to minutes of committees. There's 2 committees there, so we'll move these and then we'll deal with each one. Is somebody prepared to move that recommendation?
So moved.
Thanks, councillor Roldager. Seconded. Councillor Kay. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Now that's, was assuming we need to get to recognise the annual meeting, so you're happy with that? Councillor Roldager and councillor Kay?
Yes.
Thank you. So 13.1, the Western Area Management Committee is minutes of the meeting plus the annual meeting.
Mr. Mayor, just before you get that, I'd just like to point out that the change in the secretary's position at Western Area Management Committee, Julie Gray spent 37 years as secretary treasurer of that committee, as did the former mayor Ross Hine, had been there that length of time, and Heather Gray had spent some considerable time there. To get people to volunteer to do that is very difficult these days to get them to do that. They've done an outstanding job to keep that community together. All of those 3 people, if there was something on, they was always ring up or you could find out anything you like, and I think they need to be recognised here, and at some point we need to recognise them at a function somewhere, whether it's here or a special function, but it needs to be done. Yeah?
I thought we decided that we were going to write to our committees and see if people need to be recognised and do it all. I don't think we should do just one, but I'm not sure that we've actually got around to that. So we'll probably need to make a note of that again, because I know we talked about that when they shifted out a year or 2 ago from Norway. So we need to follow that through and talk to the other committees as well, because a number of these committees would have people that's been there for many years and held positions, a lot of them as well, so that doesn't happen. Thanks for the reminder. Councillor Elizabeth?
No, I was concurring with Councillor Roldager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at you.
El's Elliott.
A couple of years ago, I asked that President's reports from annual general meeting for our committee be tabled with the annual general meeting. I've noticed that it hasn't been done here and probably wasn't done on the standing committee upcoming. Could we get those President's reports and lay them on the table so that we, the council, have got an overview of what's happened through the year, and that we get the minutes, and also the public are able to see what the good work these committees do.
Yep, fine. Anything further on Western Area Management Committee? Very understanding the town hall, which is, as our GM alluded to, and I think that we ought to be looking at having a meeting at Stanley and letting people know that they haven't got a committee, and people over in Stanley need to have a look and see who else might be available. But I think we do need to do something fairly soon, because if there's no committee here, obviously it's going to be difficult for council to operate that from here and get them, because things that physically need to be done, and so they need to be. But I think that there would be some people at Sandy probably that wouldn't be aware that the people weren't going to stand, and so I think our first step should be to go out there and see who is available and what we can do to keep that place going, because it's obviously an important place that we need to get progress.
Mr. Mayor, I think you need to do that sooner rather than later, to get it out there, because if you've got to say, Mr. Mayor, that we don't get a committee, we're going to close the standing town hall, They'll all come after me.
Well, that would be. I would have thought, well, at least state without a committee there, it's going to be very difficult to run it. Whether, I don't think we can say that close it because it's a decision for council later, but I think that it is going to be difficult to run it if we don't have a committee. So people need to know that, and I would expect that as many councillors as possible attend that meeting so we can have a talk to these people. But do we need a recommendation to do that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take that. Organise that. Until the council's involved.
Thank you. All right, so we're happy with that then, councillors? There's nothing else that you wanted to talk about, there's nothing actually else there, so probably nothing to talk about. We'll then go down to the next lot of public questions. I'm not going to read the spiel out again. If anybody has got a question, we might have one more.
Just me again, nothing to worry about. What you just mentioned there about the Stanley Town Hall Committee, do committees like this fall over completely very often? If they do, what happens if council step in? And if so, and as a second additional question, does council have a strategy for what they may need to do if these committees do start shrinking as less and less people are giving their time as volunteers and getting involved at the ground level?
Ones like this one, I've never seen it happen. The only one that did fall out was basketball, and we were happy to take that on because it was actually run from here and some things was done here. What's that?
The southern area one big too.
So what? Oh, yeah, that was being closed at the same time as well. We've never had a building that's been continued to be operated and where it's fallen over. So council would have, if we go to stand here and we can't find a committee, then council's got to have a look at what strategy we have to keep it open if we can.
So as a general rule then, if the committee completely falls over and there's no one to take those places, those facilities are either closed or council has to find a way to manage them themselves.
That's it.
Which is obviously quite
Yep. And normally what the committees do is they normally, if they know that there's a number of people going to finish up, they normally go and talk to other people and between themselves they normally get somebody to have a go. So whether they've done that this time or not, I don't know, and probably they haven't.
So yeah, other community halls in the region that probably aren't utilised as much as similar things probably happen. Yeah, so a long way before my time, so to me this can't be necessary.
I was just going to say, I think probably as it's gone on, the committee in Stanley are getting older people and probably commitments. So we probably need to see a young generation probably come into the start stepping up to those roles.
Yeah.
It's not a hard work that you have to do. You just need somebody to book in for whatever rent, if somebody wants to rent all this town hall. But the whole thing is you still need those valuable members of the community to unlock the hall, and that's where this committee, they've been a wonderful committee, but we need to have some young ones now to start stepping up, possibly and hopefully for the future. It's very important because they have films, there's lots of bookings done for the Stanley Town Hall. It's a very popular venue for people throughout the state and probably even from the mainland, from the musical sense.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting timing that it kind of ran out. It's like kind of running out with it. It's being utilised more and more. It feels like all the community meetings and stuff seems to be being used more than it ever has. So I thought it was interesting.
I'm sure somebody will come up and step up and
hopefully so. Thank you very much for your time.
Any further questions?
Bradley Gawn, President of Circle Head, shedless men, but now thanks to all of you, we have a shed. Not a question, just a thank you. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, I need a motion that council is absolute majority that matters listed below be considered in closed meeting.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ives Harris and who's second?
Don't believe I'm moving.
Councillor Hogan. I'll call the motion, all those in favour? Aye. And another one, that closes the meeting. Thanks, Deputy Mayor, second, Councillor Wilson. Any motion, all those in favour?
Aye.
Just keep it up.
I'll keep track of it. You keep it really well.
Thanks, Noel. That's where.
Wait till